A serial killer, by definition, is someone who has killed at least two individuals in at least two different incidents. While there is no legal definition of serial murder, the crimes committed by serial killers are often seized upon by the media and the public consciousness, especially when there are several victims or the killings are carried out in a particularly grisly method. Watch as we delve into the lives of some of history's most infamous serial killers. Number 1. We call him Jack the Ripper, but we don't really know who did one of the most famous killing sprees in history. In 1888, the killer showed up in the Whitechapel neighborhood of London. He killed 5 prostitutes and cut up their bodies. Police thought that the person who did it was a surgeon, a butcher, or someone else who knew how to use a scalpel. The killer sent letters to the community and the police that explained what he or she had done. Even though there have been many suspects over the years, the real killer has never been found. Number 2. Jeffrey Dahmer started killing when he was only 18 years old in 1978. He wasn't caught until 1991, when a would-be victim escaped and led police to Dahmer's home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Some of the horrible details of his life as a killer were shown in photos of dismembered bodies and body parts that were all over his apartment. He even had a big pot of acid that he used to kill people. In total, Dahmer killed 17 people, most of whom were black young men. He went to prison twice, the first time for sexual assault and the second time for murder. In 1994, a fellow prisoner killed him. Number 3. Dr. Harold Shipman is the alias of Dr. Death, is estimated to have resulted in the deaths of at least 218 patients. However, the actual number is probably closer to 250. This physician practiced in London between 1972 and 1998, committing murders while working in 2 separate offices. He wasn't apprehended until several people raised red flags, including an undertaker who was shocked by the large number of cremation certificates Shipman was involved with, as well as the fact that the majority of the victims were elderly women who died in bed during the day rather than at night. The inquiry was bungled by the police, and Shipman continued killing until he became greedy and attempted to forge a will for a victim that named him beneficiary, which prompted the daughter of the victim to become suspicious. In 2000, he was finally convicted, and in 2004, he committed suicide in prison. Number 4. John Wayne Gacy was a construction worker who was well liked by his suburban neighbors. He was also active in politics and occasionally performed as a clown at children's birthday parties. No clown he wasn't. In 1978, Gacy was suspected after a 15-year-old boy who had been last seen with him vanished. It wasn't the first time that relatives of missing boys had blamed Gacy, but it was the first time that officials had paid attention to them. The smell of over 30 people buried in a 4-foot crawl space beneath the Gacy residence was there when authorities were given access to the house thanks to a search warrant. He was put to death by lethal injection in 1994 after being found guilty on 33 counts of murder and extra counts of rape and torture. Number 5. Henry Howard Holmes, the pharmacist who turned a hotel into a torture castle, was one of Chicago's most infamous serial killers. Before the 1893 World's Fair, Holmes relocated to Chicago and began outfitting a 3-story hotel with a variety of nefarious devices such as gas lines, secret passages and trapdoors, hallways to dead ends, chutes to the basement, soundproofed padding, and torture devices strewn throughout a maze. The gas enabled Holmes to knock out his guests before the worst of what was to come, which was frequently on his surgical tables. He then burned the bodies in the furnace of the building, selling skeletons to medical schools and committing life insurance fraud. He confessed to more than 30 murders before being hanged in 1896, only after a fellow con artist turned him in for failing to meet a financial agreement. Number 6. One of the most prolific serial killers in the world may still be at large. More than 300 deaths have been linked to Pedro Lopez in his home Colombia, as well as in Ecuador and Peru. At least 1/3 of the victims were female tribal members. After Lopez's 1980 arrest, authorities discovered the graves of almost 50 of his teenage victims. Later, he was found guilty of killing 110 girls in Ecuador and confessed to an additional 240 murders in Colombia and Peru. The monster of the Andes did not even serve 20 years in prison, as he was released for good conduct in 1998. After more than 2 decades, his whereabouts are still unknown. Number 7. Ted Bundy liked the attention that his murders brought him, and many Americans were happy to give it to him. From Washington and Oregon to Utah and Colorado, he mostly killed college-aged women. No one knows how many people he killed, but it was mostly women. Bundy was arrested and convicted of kidnapping in Colorado, but he got out of jail and moved to Florida, where he killed many more people. Bundy's last arrest, and what happened after it caught the attention of the whole country. The accused murderer acted as his own lawyer during what is thought to be the first televised murder trial, gave interviews, and talked about how many fans he had made. In the end, he was put to death in an electric